Lawyers of Reddit. What was the biggest gotcha moment you ever experienced? I acted for a plumber who ripped up a tile floor to replace a pipe. He installed a new tile on top, but warned the owners not to walk on it for 48 hours. He emphasized not to let their kids or their dogs walk on it either. They walked on it, but alleged the defects were caused by improper install. We had an expert do a report which confirmed it was consistent with proper installation, but people walking on it too soon. Crazy homeowners still went to trial on it. In their evidence disclosure, they included a series of pictures. One of the pictures had in the foreground a tile that was tilted upwards. The background very clearly showed a dog's paw pressing down on the other end of the tile. That wasn't so much an I got them situation as they got themselves. How can people blatantly go against what they're told and then try to take it to court? I guess it happens all the time, so I shouldn't be too surprised, but that's just, come on. You were given explicit instructions. Did kindergarten not go well for you? Story 2. My brother is an attorney. He had a case where the guy said he was permanently disabled from a work accident. At a deposition, my brother overheard the guy talking about getting his house remodeled. He was already spending the money he thought he was going to get. My brother drove by the house to see how much work was being done, and he saw the guy carrying bundles of roofing shingles up a ladder to the roof. This was before smartphones, so he drove to Best Buy and bought a video camera, and then went back and recorded the guy. He had copies made and sent to the other attorney. The guy dropped the suit and was back at work the following Monday. My brother's client didn't want to pay for the video camera. He saved them thousands of dollars. They eventually paid, but he still gets a little peeved when he talks about it. If you're going to trial saying you have this debilitating injury, come on. At least fake it in your own life too. You're gonna get caught. This is so stupid. You're so stupid. You deserve to get caught for this, 100%. Story 3. Worked as a paralegal/investigator, working a trade secrets case involving the manufacture of dental wheels to grind teeth. Long story, but go with it. Company A was a small family-owned manufacturer, but made the best product on the market from a small factory in the middle of nowhere. Sold massive amounts of product because of quality. Its location was remote enough and the owner paid employees so well that the employees stayed there forever. All of them had worked there for 30 plus years. When the founder of Company A died, it was sold to international Company B, because the kids and grandkids had no interest in the company. Company B then closed the old factory and tried to use Company's A formula at their facilities. Company B couldn't make the formula work. Now enter Company C, another international company who lost the bid on buying Company A. When Company C heard about the problems Company B was having, they bought the old factory facilities and then rehired the old staff to restart production. All the employees of old Company A were delighted to have their good-paying jobs back and went straight to work, producing the better quality items once again, and Company C's product worked. Company B sues Company C for trade secrets violation. When you buy a company, you buy their trade secrets, and this company had a bunch. This product was just one part, but also the most profitable part of their operation. Thus, Company C, because of their action, was accused of violating the laws governing trade secrets. Company B even managed to get a temporary restraining order against Company C in federal court, and Company C had to stop manufacturing at the old plant now owned. This is when I enter the picture. Our firm represented Company C. I was assigned to interview all the employees. I was in the living room of this delightful older lady in her late 50s that offered me snacks, asked if I was married, and wanted to set me up with her granddaughter. Best and funniest interview ever. Then she drops the bomb. I asked her how she knew how to make the product. All my previous interviews said so-and-so taught them. She said, "From the directions on the wall." Total moment of silence. I'm sorry, directions on the wall? Yes, she said. No one ever looks at them, but there's a board on the wall with the directions. I called the janitor of the facility from her phone, yeah, this is before cell phones, and had him meet me there. He unlocks the place and yep, covered in probably 40 years of dust, making it just part of the background, is a board with the entire process on it. Thus, when Company B sold the factory, which was eventually purchased by Company C, Company B accidentally sold the trade secret to Company C because they abandoned it on the wall. I did serious evidence sourcing on this. My best pictures were of the 65-plus-year-old former janitor knocking the dust off the pages, taking the entire board off the wall, putting it in a paper bag, and sealing it so I never touched it. Every picture, he smiled for the camera. His F you expression was priceless in every picture. They were so freaking funny. The judge in federal court was laughing his butt off when he heard the details of what I found to reverse the restraining order. When he opened the bag, he laughed even more. The factory reopened immediately. Company B and C settled by agreeing that they both got to use the trade secret but couldn't sell it to anyone else. What they really figured out was those little old ladies had slightly changed the formula over the years, and made them better over time. Even the formula on the wall didn't work as well as these little ladies did. Usually when there are posts that go really into this kind of niche specific thing, I tend to avoid them. This one though, I feel like, although it feels niche, anyone can appreciate it, you know? I hope I'm not wrong about that. I thought it was hilarious. Story 4. Not a lawyer, but when I was in the military, I was accused of something I didn't do. I had to go to court over it. And during court, the prosecutor started to detail this investigation and how they had staked my apartment out for months. They entered into evidence a picture of my apartment, and when they put it up, I looked shocked at my lawyer, because that was not a picture of my place. It was my ex-wife's apartment, a place I had never lived. Never even spent a single night there. I lived in a house, she lived in an apartment. And when my lawyer was asked if she objected to the picture being entered into evidence, she replied, "I don't mind them entering it into evidence as long as they change the listing of it." And when one of the members of the panel, no judge, 3-member board, asked what was wrong with the listing, she looked at him and said, "That's not his apartment." On top of this, the witness they used against me described going to my house on the night in question, and she named the subdivision where she had visited me. Except, that wasn't where I lived either. Also wasn't where the picture they had was. Case was dismissed, and I was told they requested the witness to return to answer questions about perjury. Story 5. Represented a DUI client who swore up and down to me that he hadn't been drinking or doing any drugs. Newbie officer who had his field training officer with him in the car. Rookie pulls client over for a tag violation, walks back to the car with body camera still on. Training officer says, "Get him out for a DUI." And the rookie says, "But he's not intoxicated." To which the reply was, "Do it anyway." Body cam clicks off, turns on 7 minutes later when they're doing field sobriety exercises on my client. Client sat in custody for 3 weeks until I finally got the tape from the prosecutor and presented it to the judge. The "oh crap" looks from the prosecutor and FTO when the judge saw the tape, ooh, I'll treasure that one. Judge wrote the police chief a letter saying the FTO was dead to him, and he would deny every search warrant he tried to bring thereafter for being a liar. Client is hopefully still on track with his civil attorney in a lawsuit. Look, this might be a hot take, I don't know. But if cops have body cameras, why can they turn them off? They are there to prove that what the cop is doing is, I don't know, lawful, or at least it makes sense. If they can just turn them off when they're about to do something wrong and they know it, what's even going on there? Anyway, rant over. Story 6. My only full trial. Contractor ripping off my client who was no saint. I went through entire contract where each sub was listed and he agreed to each line as being part of the contract. He agreed to the total. What he failed to do was list any profit. My last question was, "Where's your profit in this contract?" No answer from him. As written, he was working for free. Case dismissed by judge without me having to present my side. Story 7. My client was a woman working at a meat packing plant. Her glove, they would only give her the loose kind because they were cheaper, got caught in the machine and she lost her arm. We sued the owners of the plant for the glove issue. We also sued the machine manufacturer for failing to include the required guard. Then we sued the distributor for being in the chain of the sale, but didn't really think they played much of a role. The manufacturer swore they included a handguard and said the plant owner must have used a grinder to take it off. During a deposition of the guy that owned the distribution company, he shows up with the sale documents he was supposed to have turned over weeks before. Turns out there was a note in small print at the bottom he didn't know about, and it said that the sale was without the handguard, which is against the law. I pointed it out, and we ended up settling that afternoon with the distributor. The woman got all her medical bills paid, got money for a prosthetic, and got a bunch of pain and suffering damages. I do like hearing things like this work out for the employee. I still hate hearing that they happened in the first place, though. That really sucks to her, and I hope that she's doing all right now. I'm sure the settlement didn't hurt. Story 8. Not a lawyer, but one time I represented myself in a speeding ticket dispute. The officer supposedly caught me speeding with his radar. After he finished presenting his case, I got to cross-examine him. Now, he was pretty good about providing evidence for the radar unit's accuracy, saying that he had tested the radar before and after his shift with the tuning forks the radar came with. He even had the factory certificates for the tuning forks. But what he didn't realize was that the certificates were dated 1995, and I knew that those forks hadn't been recertified/calibrated since they left the factory in 1995, because calibrating the forks wasn't standard procedure for my local PD. So I laid all that out and asked how he could be sure the radar was accurate, since we couldn't be sure that the tuning forks he used were accurate. He just kind of went on a long ramble about how he'd been using the radar for a long time and it always worked well. At that point, I was feeling pretty good and I thought I had him. But the judge found me guilty anyway, saying that the officer's visual speed estimation was enough to convict, even if the radar evidence is in question. For some things, I might be able to accept this. For speeding? I don't know. I guess it depends how many cars are around you, right? If you're obviously going way faster than the cars around you, then you're probably speeding. But if it's just like you taking a shot down a road, it's kind of hard to tell just from visuals. That sounds kind of BS to me. Story 9. Not a lawyer. Was taking my ex to court over custody of my kid. I had compiled a 150-page dossier complete with a report from Child Protective Services since there was abuse in the household, text messages, and tons of records of contempt of our previous agreement. My daughter has a court-assigned lawyer that is normal in these cases, which after reading through all the materials and talking to all the parties, sided with my lawyer and I. Ex decided to represent themselves because, hubris, I suppose? Before the case was heard in the hallway outside of the courtroom, she gave me an agreement she typed up which would grant me custody, as well as some generous provisions for herself. I politely declined as we were confident we would be getting a lot more in trial. Case was called Testimonies In. She put on the most hilariously insane and embarrassing show for the court. In her closing testimony, she attempted to hand the judge the agreement she tried to give us. Judge refused to take it. "You can't just hand me things. That's not how you submit things into evidence. I'm not reading that." She's arguing with the judge, yelling at him and losing her mind. In the insane nonsense she was spewing, she said, "And this agreement gives him custody, which is one of the things he's after," in what I assume was an attempt to show that she's attempting a compromise. My lawyer peppers in a quick statement. "Okay, so you agree for the father to have full custody?" She snaps in heated anger. "Yes, that's what I agreed to." Our side falls completely silent, and the judge, after much effort, ends her little outburst. Gave his final verdict, which started with granting me custody and putting her in court-mandated therapy. She literally gave away custody of her daughter in a heated argument with the judge. I gotta say, someone that volatile that this can even happen to probably isn't the best parent. I don't know the full story here, but it does sound like that OP was the better parent to choose. Rough for the kid either way though, don't get me wrong. Story 10. I represent tenants in eviction proceedings. Landlords being landlords, I have lots of gotcha stories. The most recent one was last week, in a classic he said, she said case. That is, the entire case depended upon whom the jury believed. When the landlord was sworn in prior to testifying, she unnecessarily said, "Yes, on the Bible," when asked to tell the truth, the whole truth, etc. Her testimony, however, was evasive. She avoided answering almost every one of my questions. She even avoided answering some of her own lawyer's questions. During a recess, but still in the middle of her testimony, she was seen outside the courtroom in full view of the jury, whispering with her lawyer and a family member about, obviously, what she was supposed to say on the stand. When she got back up, the first thing I did was ask her what she was talking about with her lawyer and her family member outside of the courtroom. I demanded to know whether they were telling her how to answer my questions. Her lawyer objected. The judge overruled the objection and ordered the witness to answer. The witness responded, "My life is my life." During closing arguments, her lawyer tried to argue that she must have been telling the truth because she swore on the Bible even though she didn't have to. That meant, according to him, that she took her oath more seriously than the average person, implied my client, who wouldn't bother swearing on a Bible when not asked to do so. In my response, I agreed with the landlord's counsel that his client must take her oath to tell the truth seriously. She must have taken it so seriously, in fact, that she refused to lie under oath when her truthful testimony would have sunk her case. So instead, she just refused to answer almost every question put to her. The jury came back in about 30 minutes with a 12-0 verdict in the tenant's favor. Story 11. Not a lawyer, but a legal videographer. This gentleman was claiming injuries/seeking damages against his employer after a fall at work. He claimed he couldn't raise his right arm above his shoulder because of the fall. First, the deposition comes along and I'm hired by defendant's attorney to videotape deposition of the plaintiff. Anyone know the first thing a court reporter asks you to do in a deposition? Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Plaintiff raises his right arm above his shoulder with ease and no sign of discomfort. Has no idea what he just did. Both attorneys were looking down at their notes when this happened and neither of them caught it. The plaintiff himself didn't catch it. The court reporter looked at him and then looked at me, and her eyes went wide with realization at what just happened. 4 hours of deposition proceeded wherein the plaintiff is instructed multiple times to show his range of motion, and proceeds to pretend like he can't raise his arm above shoulder level. You know, like he did at the very beginning of the deposition. Deposition ends, plaintiff's counsel leaves. I call defense, hiring party, counsel over, and show him the first 2 minutes of tape. Counsel excitedly whispers to me, "Case closed, you just saved us tens of thousands of dollars." I got $5,000 bonus and plaintiff's case was dismissed with prejudice. Story 12. I had a former client file for bankruptcy and in connection with that case brought an action against his landlord for violating the automatic stay. In order to prove damages, he wanted to show he paid my firm for legal fees in connection with the landlord's pursuit of rent in violation of the stay. So this former client's bankruptcy lawyer serves me a subpoena to show up at the bankruptcy hearing. He didn't ask me any questions prior, but just gave me the gist of what the objective was, i.e. verify with the court the time I spent and the cost to his client. The bankruptcy attorney called his client, my former client, to the stand first. He asked him questions related to his hiring my firm to do this and that as it related to his landlord. Apparently, that's not enough. The bankruptcy attorney wants me to verify these facts as well. I get put on the stand and I'm asked to verify the invoice. I first object to the question as a precaution, since it may be a violation of attorney-client privilege to answer the question and to cover me for any claim by the bar or my former client. As predicted, the judge overrules and orders me to answer. I review the invoice and answer, no, this isn't my invoice. His attorney, I don't understand. This is your firm's logo and information, right? Yes. And you provided these legal services, right? No. A very confused attorney slowly started to put together, after a couple more follow-up questions, that this idiot client of ours had manufactured my invoice to prove his damages. Needless to say that I could have given his new attorney the heads up, but I wasn't going to help someone who had committed perjury to the court using my name. I had represented him in a completely different matter, and this guy was trying to make some extra cash through this bankruptcy hearing. 2 lessons: tell your attorney everything, and as an attorney, make sure your client feels comfortable to tell you everything. Story 13. Cross-examining a custom home builder who had a lump sum contract, set price as opposed to cost plus, which means cost of the materials plus X% as a builder fee. Claimed he put 20% more labor/materials in building the home than the contracted provided for, and he was suing for these excess costs. Was asking him about an email with my client negotiating the price of the construction, and he volunteers that he knew he couldn't build it for that price. My head snaps up. Supervising partner's head snaps up. And opposing counsel goes pale. Dialogue was something like this. You quoted X price? Yes. You knew you couldn't build it for that price? You knew the homeowner was relying on that quote? Yes. You knew homeowner wouldn't have signed contract without that representation? Yes. And you told homeowner's lender you could do it for X? Yes. And the bank relied on that price and wouldn't have given the loan if it was wrong? Yes. This is textbook fraudulent inducement, and he had no idea. Builder got poured out in the arbitration award and slapped Builder with sizable punitive damages on top of it. 5 minutes of testimony sunk his case because he volunteered information without being prompted. Story 14. My grandpa has told me this story at least 100 times, but it's always entertaining. He was jury foreman for a murder trial in a small town in Tennessee. 2 guys got in an argument at a bar with the victim. The 2 guys drove home, got a rifle, came back and shot the guy in the head. Months later, while on trial, the 2 guys are getting hammered by evidence and eyewitness testimony. These guys were idiots and left a huge trail of evidence. While the evidence is about to wrap up with them going down for murder, the prosecutor brings the final nail in the coffin. A surprise witness, who happened to be the guy they had supposedly murdered. These 2 idiots had shot the wrong person, who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, wearing the wrong clothes. Can you imagine being those guys, though? How much it would suck to be like, at least we got the guy, though. We're going to jail, but hey, we did what we set out to do. Actually, all I know, I would be pissed. Really, if I got caught by any of these gotcha moments, I'd be pretty pissed. But reading them was very satisfying, and I hoped listening to them was satisfying as well. I also hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll catch you in the next one.